Welcome back to Comic Book ASMR. Today we're going to be looking at this book here called Spider-Man, The First 60 Years. And this is more or less a magazine that they put a hard cover on. But yeah, these books are kind of cool. I did a Captain America one recently. I'll leave a link to that in the description as well. But yeah, so I recently got this one, and it just goes through, as you can see here, decade by decade, the history of Spider-Man. Spider-Man is definitely one of my favorite Marvel characters, and so it's cool that they had this book. He is my middle kid's favorite character ever, superhero, so he really loves him. So we'll just go into it and kind of react to stuff as we go along. So first we see this is Amazing Spider-Man #1's cover. I believe recently, in the past few years or so, it sold for something ridiculous. I can't recall, but I know it's the rate of it was like higher than anything from that period has gotten. So they're trying to put him on the map with some of the heavier hitters like Superman and Batman's crucial first issues and stuff. So we've got the 1960s here. So we've got Spider-Man's first appearance here. Yeah, for the longest time I did not know that Jack Kirby had drawn this cover because he was discouraged from drawing interiors for Spider-Man. I think just because he made him like too muscular and stuff. And I guess just kind of from this angle that worked a little bit. I think they probably reworked the face though. I don't know, but the thug he's holding here definitely looks like how Kirby is known to draw. But I was surprised because always in my head I'm like, oh, Kirby's not really a Spider-Man artist, but yet for the most important Spider-Man book, his first appearance, Kirby drew that cover, so that's pretty neat. And then yeah, we've got like the first page for Spider-Man's first appearance here. The Tales Amazing Fantasy #15. And I love that they've thrown in stuff from Steve Ditko. He was crucial in the creation of Spider-Man as well. Stan always gets a lot of credit just because of how Stan is. I think Spider-Man's probably one I would say. Stan did have a large part to play in the character, though, for sure. But as far as the visual side and things like that, Steve Ditko was definitely integral into the creation. So you get a little excerpt from Steve here. It says, one of the first things I did was to work up a costume, a vital visual part of the character. I had to know how he looked before I did any breakdowns. I wasn't sure Stan would like the idea of covering the character's face, but I did it because it hid an obviously boyish face, and it would also add mystery to the character. And then Stan says that worked too because anyone reading the book could imagine themselves as that hero. And, that's why he was a hit with, pretty much any and every comic reader, regardless of gender and race and all this sort of thing. So he does have a bit of that catch-all to him, which is kind of neat. So yeah, we see the first pages here, the tragedy origin of the character. Yeah, Peter was really one of the first comic characters to have so many problems and issues, and that was something that Stan really pushed to do to make Marvel unique when he was almost out the door. I always get confused on it, but I suppose Fantastic Four was actually the first book he had wrote to success, of where he had taken his wife's advice and she's like, if you're gonna quit, write one how you would always write it and see how it does. And then Fantastic Four #1 was a hit. I could have sworn for the longest time it was actually that Spider-Man book, but I could get him flipped. But regardless, he really did something that was seen in like classic literature a lot. The great epics and tragedies and stuff, a lot of like a Greek mythology type stuff where there's really layers to characters. So you've got to credit Stan for kind of interweaving that into the comic book medium, because for the longest time a lot of the heroes were just pretty much untouchable, but Stan gave them that fun little wrinkle, where they weren't invincible. They had problems like we had problems. Peter had money problems, girl problems, the guilt of his uncle later, the death of his girlfriend, things like that. So, and that's happened to him more than a few times. So he has certainly had his share of things he's dealt with, and that's a huge part of the character. And then we see here the lineup again as well. I'm looking at the Steve piece again. So, yeah, of course, Steve Ditko was a very hard worker. He kept himself a lot, too. He didn't want to be kind of that cheerleader that Stan was. He was kept himself a lot, really stayed out of the public eye, but he did tremendous work and really helped with the success of Spider-Man as we know him. So we see some pretty important issues here as well. I believe this is the Lizard's first appearance cover, Green Goblin's first appearance here, and then just kind of some profile stuff in the back here with other really great villains. Let's read this little Stan excerpt. My publisher said that in his ultimate wisdom, Stan, that is the worst idea I've ever heard. First of all, people hate spiders, so you can't call a book Spider-Man. Secondly, he can't be a teenager. Teenagers are only to be sidekicks. And third, we can't have personal problems if he's supposed to be a superhero. Don't you know who a superhero is? Yeah, so that's harking back to a lot of the elements that Stan wanted to put in the book. And he's just pushed right ahead and did it. And, Spider-Man has been a great success, ever since the creation of the character. So Romita Sr. took over after Ditko, and he did a lot of great things with the character too, visually, of definitely a huge high mark on the character when you go back and look at a lot of the early work and kind of the visual I guess kind of turnarounds of the character, just like what most people would base, even if there's like a filler artist, they would model Romita Sr.'s style. So Romita says, people laugh when I say this, but I did not want to do Spider-Man. I wanted to work on Daredevil. The only reason I did Spider-Man was because Stan asked me and I felt that I should help out like a good soldier. And yeah, he did tremendous work with Spider-Man. And we got Kingpin first appeared in Spider-Man, which is funny because, he's like Daredevil's big bad, but it was Spider-Man number 50, I believe, is Kingpin's first appearance at Spider-Man No More cover. I believe I'm reading here, seeing 51 for this image here, so maybe he has like a cameo in number 50. It's been a while since I've looked at it, so I don't recall all the details. And of course, we've got the classic "You hit the jackpot" Mary Jane Watson there. And I was a kid much later than the initial people who read it, so I always rooted for MJ and Peter. But there's definitely this period of Peter and Gwen Stacy that was very magical as well. And then the tragedy there where he accidentally killed her trying to save her when the Green Goblin drops her, snaps her neck on the way down from the impact. And then, even Captain Stacy dying as well. A classic image there. Crisis on Campus. This was kind of amazing too because, it was really rare to have comics having kind of things as they were happening be referenced in their books. Granted, I mean, you can go back to like classic DC stuff and see a lot of like the World War stuff, fighting Nazis and things like that, as well as Marvel, obviously, with Captain America and all that. But to see things like the campus protests and stuff like that. That was an angle that wasn't really seen in comic books before. And Stan was keen on the fact that a lot of his readers, especially with kind of the way he transformed the medium to be more than something just for kids by putting in those other layers too. It's still being written simplistically as far as like, verbal wise, so a kid could pick it up and read it, but adding in elements of stuff that could definitely be skewed towards an adult or a college goer, wherever you put that. College is kind of an interesting kind of in between transition between teenagerhood and adulthood, even though technically a lot of them are over 18 and all that sort of stuff. You could definitely say it's a transition into adulthood. So he knew a lot of his readers were college attenders, so he put in this element too, and that was really neat to do that. So at the bottom here we can see the timeline, and I'm sure it'll continue on through here, so hitting a lot of high marks here. So we've got Amazing Fantasy. It came out in August 1962, and then we've got March 1963 was when Spider-Man #1 came out. That is interesting that came out so much later than Amazing Fantasy. I do wonder why, honestly. But I think after this, then he'd maybe, I don't know the timeline of when Stan had written everything. I was like, well, maybe all of his energy was focused on Fantastic Four, and then, then they put Spider-Man as an ongoing. I'm not sure. Then I think this is an early Daredevil appearance here. Spider-Man 16, yeah. And then this is just talking about other characters here. Spider-Man 25, Smythe, JJ. I could have sworn JJ was used earlier, though. I think so. They're just talking about, it's just Smythe, yeah. And then the classic Spider-Man getting crushed by the steel stuff with the water dripping down on him there. That's Spider-Man number 33. We got this Goblin appearance 39 here. And then continuing on here, Spider-Man 44, the Shocker, and then Spider-Man 50. Like I said, I think that's Kingpin's first appearance. And that's, of course, the classic Spider-Man No More cover. 56 introduces George Stacy. That's Gwen Stacy's father. 67 here. This introduces Robbie's son, Randy. 76 through 77 was when Buscema took over briefly for Romita Sr. And then Spider-Man 90, Death of George Stacy, drawn by Gil Kane, who was a good ringer for Romita there, it's saying. So then we got the 70s here. This is the, of course, iconic death of Gwen Stacy scene here. That's Spider-Man number 100. And we've got the use of drugs in the comic, which was a big deal because it was not able to carry the Comics Code Authority label. But they've wanted to really make it kind of an anti-drug sort of issue. So even though it depicted drugs and them being taken and this type of stuff, they were really trying to get a message across with it. So they pushed it in there anyway. We've got later stuff. If you watch the cartoons, you certainly remember the part where they had him with the 6 arms and all that. And then he meets the X-Men and all that fun stuff. So we've got, let's see here, this is Spider-Man number 100. Below, this is in Spider-Man 100 as well. We got Morbius here. This is issue number 101, really? Huh. I thought it was later or somewhere else. And then this is talking about Stan Lee putting in topical elements into the comics, as I was saying. Gary Conway, another great Spider-Man artist. And I missed a lot of the nuance of this. I haven't read really a full run of Spider-Man. I really should. Like I said, he's one of my favorite heroes. Captain America is the only one just because he is literally my favorite Marvel character that I've read the full run of his stuff. But definitely Spider-Man is huge. Him as well as the X-Men are probably definitely like my favorite Marvel guys. But Marvel's got just great stuff, and even I really like certain runs in Daredevil, things like that. So get the Punisher in here. That might be the first appearance one. 129, yeah, I believe so. And then we've got a Gwen Stacy clone, which is funny that they talk about it here because, as we all know, in the 90s, the huge clone problem that kind of stalled things out on Spider-Man for a bit. It's a very long, several-year arc, the clone saga there. So yeah, we continue to see the timeline here. So yeah, Spider-Man 96 through 98 are released without the Comics Code Authority due to the forbidden content, the drug use and that. 101, Gil Kane drawing in there. First time Stan Lee is not listed as one of the authors. Interesting. I didn't know it had taken 101 issues for that to happen. And then Gary Conway started with issue 111 to be a normal resident Spidey artist there. Green Goblin kills Gwen and the readers mourn along with Peter. That's 121. And then here's kind of some more. We see the Marvel team-up stuff, which eventually just became Spidey's own book since he was like the mainstay in all of them anyway, because he was a really popular character. So it's just like, well, the premise is like Spidey meets with other superheroes, and let's see what happens with that. So really neat, especially if you love Spidey. So we see kind of more just some different arcs here. Got the 80s. We see some Todd McFarlane art there. We've got the classic wedding of Peter and MJ. This was an annual, I believe. Yeah, annual number 21. Got the Hobgoblin first appearance there. Got the Secret Wars, which ushers in the black suit. Get this great Venom cover here. Probably one of McFarlane's best covers, honestly. As you know, recently I was able to get the first black suit in Amazing Spider-Man recently, so that was pretty awesome. And then, yeah, I remember when a lot of these covers, Todd was still doing some of the covers, but not the insides for the book, as the transition was slowly happening, where he did not feel he was being compensated for the sales boost he was giving to comics he was working on. So he gathered other top talent and they formed Image. And we've got the crazy Craven's Last Hunt story here, the casket here, and then Craven killing himself. And I think this is, I was about to say, that looks like a Sienkiewicz cover there. So yeah, Peter is buried alive, and then he comes back. You see some Todd McFarlane stuff there. So here's the team here. That's Peter, David, of course. There's Todd. And I want to say Todd had worked with Peter initially on the Hulk before working on Spider-Man, and then Hulk was doing so well with that. Oh, let's see what you can do on this book. And yeah, Todd was definitely an innovator in the 90s style of Spidey that was to be kind of modeled afterwards. The giant eyes, the weird contorting poses. Although this is the Bagley image here, it's just I've turned the page and that's where we're at. So, but yeah, he was, and then of course the detailed webbing and stuff like that. So Bagley more or less became the main Spider-Man artist after Todd, and he did a great job. Very dynamic as well, very cool. Shame to see Todd go, but you know, it was nice when he worked on the character. He was able to do a lot of cool things with him, and definitely the reason for quite a few Spidey fans. So we see a very 90s cybernetic arm here, and this is drawn by Eric Larson. There's Mark Bagley down there. Yeah, it's crazy. I met most of these guys and gotten stuff signed by all of them, so it's pretty awesome to be able to have had the opportunities to do all that. We got J.M. DeMatteis. He said, I love to drill deep and poke around in the character's psyches, looking for the core of who and what they are, trying to figure out why they do what they do. And we've got Venom's start of his own standalone series there, the Lethal Protector. And then this kind of falls by the wayside, you know, the Clone Saga. It got pretty complicated. A lot of people, a lot of readers lost. I remember the multiple Spider-Man Identity Crisis stuff here. This was actually when I started to collect. I did buy these issues, but I didn't buy like all the, because there's so many Spider-Man books at the time, and I was just buying them right off the newsstand. So I missed a lot of things, but I remember I had all the Identity Crisis covers, like those main for each of the four of them there. Dusk and the Hornet, and I'm trying to remember the other ones there, Ricochet, and then there's two others, I think Prodigy, and I can't remember the other one. I'm sure it'll say somewhere. And this is some of the turnaround stuff. This is probably in like some Wizard magazine or something, I'd imagine, especially with like the font. It really looks like something that would have been. So we see more milestones at the bottom here. This is Todd's last issue here, is Spider-Man 16. This is the one with the X-Force where he puts the beam, he put a sword through Juggernaut's eye, and then they censored it to be a steel beam because that's better apparently. And Todd wanted to show the sword going in his eye and there being blood, and the censors were like, no, we're not going to do that, and that really upset Todd, and that was kind of the last straw for him. Then we see the Infinity Gauntlet here. We see Carnage's first appearance. We see this one here. This was the Spider-Man 2099's first appearance in there. Is this, yeah, the start of Maximum Carnage there. Clone Saga there. And then, yeah, I remember having a few of these. I know I had the Spider-Girl comic. I had Spider-Man 2099, which he will rise back to relevance after the new Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse comes out. He's a big character in that. Yeah, but for me, I was definitely reading the Straczynski stuff for Spider-Man. You know, the in that made everyone upset. I don't think Straczynski was a full integral part of that. It was kind of a transition. I think Casada wanted to do that more than Straczynski did, but there was a lot of great bits, especially in the starting out of this arc. It had those great J. Scott Campbell covers. Ramita Jr. Was working on the book. And like I said in the past, like a lot of people don't like Ramita Jr.'s style, but I think it just kind of, especially just, his work takes like an inker who kind of knows a bit about line weight and stuff like that. So he had like the right inker on the book. The colorist worked for it. This great J. Scott cover here. We get Ezekiel, who knows all about Peter and his identity. We get like the spider totem and all this crazy stuff. A lot of unique elements in it. Aunt May finds out about Peter being Spider-Man. Got the 9/11 response issue with the black cover. Remember having that. I don't anymore, unfortunately. And then we had Ultimate Spider-Man, which made the character younger and in its own standalone universe, the Ultimate Universe, and that sold very well as well. Then going into some of these other series and covers and all sorts of good stuff. Yeah, this is a full-on just Ramita Jr. Splash right here, I think. That's in Spider-Man number 500. And we got him in New Avengers here. A bit more of the timeline. There's the dreaded One More Day. We've got the Civil War there, which was awesome. Him going public with his identity. Got the appearance of Obama. Then Spider-Man here, drawn by Todd Knock internally. I don't know who did the cover here. Phil Jimenez did the cover, it looks like. And then the relaunch, Slott's run once again had its moments. I know he hates the character and he likes to get into flame wars with people and all this stuff, but there were some good moments in One More Day. Was the whole thing a solid run? No, but it had some cool moments, and I really enjoyed the art, especially when McNiven's had the duties on that. I definitely didn't carry it all the way through. Like, I wasn't a non-stop Spidey reader. But stuff I did read, I did enjoy. See this nice Casada image there, Spidey. And then I think this is a Paul Rivera cover here, maybe. Yes. Yeah, he's got a cool style. It kind of has a bit of a throwback to the 60s feel to it, yet still keeps it, a little modern. And then we've got Humberto Ramos's style. If you read Impulse and stuff, like immediately that's where your head goes when you kind of see his style, because he made that so distinct. But Spidey's pretty fun too, very energetic and kind of weird when he does the squinty eyes like that and stuff. The mock-up Todd Knock cover with Dan Slott there. We got the Siege. These great kind of artistic covers here. These are all by Marcos Martin. Kind of another guy who would, he's very design driven, as you can see, simplistic yet effective. And same kind of feel, just a little bit of old school. And then we have the Ultimates here, with the death of Peter Parker transitioning into Miles taking over. Definitely a big deal there. Was that issue number 160? Or maybe even earlier. It says 160 is this one here. The Uncle Ben welcoming Peter to heaven there. Then we have Superior Spider-Man, where they, benched Peter, swapped them in bodies with a brutalized Doc Ock. While Doc Ock had his body and was being a better Spider-Man. Got Spider-Gwen here. Spider-Verse stuff. Silk, another character who's becoming important as they make movies and things like that. So yeah, more, they pushed it out here. This is the Nick Bradshaw, and I think Zeb Wells is the writer. Yeah, and they did cool stuff there. Kind of bummed that Kindred was, really just, I think Harry Osborn, if I remember. But still cool to have that mystery around that character and all that stuff, and then the stuff with the Sin Eater and all that, and then we had Ultimate Carnage, or is it Ultimate Carnage? I can't remember if it went by another name or not, but and then we go straight up to the new relaunch with Ramita Jr. back on the art duties. Got great Art Adams covers on occasion previously. Towards the end, got a bunch of Spidey suits here. Yeah, Spider-Man's a lot of fun for sure. One of my favorites. As I can talk about, the first Spider-Man book I ever recall getting was in that kit I've showed off years ago. Was like my first comic kit. It came with 6 comics and a little green super short box. Thing probably doesn't even hold 30 books. It's right here beside me, but it's got stuff on top of it, but it's right over here. But yeah, so there was a Web of Spider-Man book, I believe, in there with Spider-Man fighting Molten Man, and I remember he shoves him in a fridge and like throws him down the stairs and all that type of stuff, and that was definitely jarring to me because I read that, I think I was 5 years old. And I think even Spidey gave the disclaimer of kids don't do this at home or whatever, because they always would have to, anytime, it's just kind of standard, just like, hey, kids don't need to emulate this, so we want to cover our butts in case a kid crawls inside a fridge and says they did it because of our comic or whatever, so yeah, that issue with Molten Man, I don't remember the issue number, but I had like the all black cover, and then it showed like Molten Man's hands towards the bottom, and then I think Spidey was just right here, like front and center on the cover. And I think it was Web of Spider-Man, but I'll have to track it down. But yeah, let me know your guys' Spider-Man stories, your favorite villains. My favorite Spider-Man villain's probably just going to be Doc Ock because of just kind of the relationship they've had. Them both being scientific geniuses and stuff, and just kind of, playing that proverbial tap dance, in like the period where Doc Ock was like dating Aunt May and stuff like that. Just kind of those fun little wrinkles to it. I know like Venom's pretty cool and things like that, but as far as just like classic standard Spidey villain, for sure I'd say Doc Ock. I understand the importance of like Green Goblin and him being kind of Spider-Man's arch with all the people he's been responsible for killing in Peter's life, and just kind of all the other ways he's messed with Peter's personal life and psyche and all this type of stuff. So I understand why he is considered like the arch villain for Spider-Man, but I really love Doc Ock. So, but yeah, let me know that. Let me know what your first issue you got when you were a kid of Spider-Man was. And if you enjoyed this, check out the Captain America one I did of this. There are a few others of these either being made or in the works. I will probably get them just because these are good to have. So we've got like the kind of Marvel overview year 80 years. That's the Cap one I did a video on. There's a Deadpool one. I can imagine that being smaller since it's only 30 years. And then we got a Fantastic Four one. But yeah, these are cool. Retails for around 25. You could probably get it cheaper for that, honestly. But yeah, I'll leave a link to that cap video. And as always, you all have a super slumber. Thanks. Bye.